Ludington. From my understanding, the Ludington pump storage facility uses water to act as a big battery. Can you give us a little more details on that? That's something.
Sure.
It sounds cool in concept, and I personally have never heard of it until researching it. So what is it?
Well, first you have to understand that the way we use electric power, the amount that people demand varies moment to moment, but particularly over the course of the day and even the week. So typically in the summertime, afternoons, we have very high usage of electricity. Summertime at night, it's pretty low. In the wintertime, it's a little different. The highest use tends to be in the early evening. People have heat and cooking and light and television and so on going.
Yep.
So in order to deal with that, power companies traditionally built a variety of different kinds of power plants. And things like coal and nuclear plants don't change very easily. The amount of power needs to be more or less constant coming out. And then they use natural gas plants and things of that sort to produce power for shorter periods of time when it's needed to meet the demand. Well, the Ludington Pump Storage Plant enables them to use cheaper power made by the large coal and nuclear plants and store it and avoid using more expensive natural gas for their peak periods. It does that by pumping water uphill at night and other times when load is low.
Okay.
And then in order to meet peak loads, it runs the water back down the hill, turns a turbine, and generates power. Other pump storage plants are mostly in rivers where there are two dams, one just above the other, in the river course.
Okay.
But the Ludington Pump Storage Plant is a bit different. It sits on the short Lake Michigan, about 10 miles south of Ludington, in sort of the central part of Michigan's Lower Peninsula. And the company's constructed a large reservoir in amongst the sand dunes on land, and then they pump water out of Lake Michigan into that reservoir, and then run it back down into Lake Michigan to generate power. It doesn't make power net. It's important to understand it actually uses power. About a third of the power that's used to pump the water is lost to friction and other things before it's run back downhill and power generated. But it basically uses cheap power to pump and then produces expensive power at times when power is expensive when it generates. So that's useful for the power company. It adds to the reliability of the grid for all of us. And in that sense, it's a good thing.
When was it constructed? When did this come about?
Construction took from 1969 to 1973. It's a very large project, so it took a long time to build.
All right.
And then there were some modifications along the way. Still, largely, it's the original project.
How many megawatts does it produce?
1,872 megawatts, which is about enough power to support 1.4 million people at an average point in time.
Really? Is that like a daily output or?
That's at a point in time if all 6 of the turbines are running.
Okay.
Given that it pumps at night and then discharges in the daytime, it can produce that much power for sort of 6 to 8 hours of the day, and then it has to pump the other hours.
Okay. Now, who does it affect? Like, it seems like it's a pretty large project. Does it stay, like, does the power stay around and affect directly Ludington people, or how does that work with the grid?
The plant is jointly owned by Detroit Edison, or DTE Energy as it's now known, and Consumers Energy. And they run transmission lines, very large lines on high metal towers that you see going across the countryside.
Yep.
From Ludington to their distribution grids. And then there are also transmission lines that go south and around Lake Michigan, the Chicago area. So they actually also buy and sell power with Chicago area utilities. So it serves, in some sense, most of the lower peninsula of Michigan and some areas outside of the state.
you anticipate this being a reusable model in the future, or just kind of a cool thing that happened and is still a part of Michigan's culture and energy culture?
Well, there are some problems with the plant at this point. The biggest is that in pumping the water in and out of the lake, it kills fish.
Okay.
And at one time, before some protective measures were installed, it was killing about 5% of the fish in the Michigan waters of Lake Michigan per year.
Wow.
Millions of fish.
Substantial.
Worth a lot of money in commercial recreational fishing and things like that. As part of a court case and settlement in which I was involved on behalf of the state of Michigan, the utilities agreed to operate a barrier net that keeps the larger fish out.
Good.
And that's pretty effective.
Good.
And they also they pay for the fish that they kill into something called the Great Lakes Fishery Trust, which is then used to try to provide benefits to Great Lakes fisheries in the form of better management of fisheries, public access to the lakes, things like that. So with that in mind, a project just like Ludington, another one is unlikely.
Okay.
But there is certainly some possibility for additional pump storage facilities. In addition, there are newer technologies that are or have been developed that could compete with a pump storage plant and might be more efficient. So compressing air into a cavern or a salt mine, something like that, and then releasing it can serve the same function as pumping water up the hill and running it back down. And then, of course, we have new battery technologies that are appearing in electric vehicles. And there's a real possibility that after a battery ceases to be useful in the vehicle, it could still be useful as a storage mechanism attached to the grid. So there will be some sorting out in the next few years about what works best, but there will certainly be more storage attached to the grid.